Appreciate it. With that said, we will move on to PC 2024-0801, 1401 East 23rd Avenue Fencing Site Plan Review. And now invite Ms. Wood to present the staff report for this case.
Good evening, Mayor and Planning Commissioners. This case in front of you is an fence exception being petitioned by Ms. Sibbles. This particular exception came as a code violation. Can you hear me? Is it on?
You're a little quiet.
Oh. Hello? Hello?
There it is.
Okay. This case in front of you is an exception to a fence code requirement that regarding to the finished side of the fence has to be facing the public right-of-way and the other adjacent property owner. However, this case came as a code violation that the property owner built the fence all the way around inside out as a request from the adjacent neighbor. However, it doesn't meet the code, so we have communicated with the property owner that he agreed to turn the fence around for the area abutting Ozark and the south property and along 23rd Avenue. However, the exception for the fence for the unfinished side to face the adjacent property owner directly abutting the east that came as a petition from the property owner. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer it. Otherwise, staff recommend the approval for this particular exception request.
Any questions from the commissioners? So just to clarify, we're leaving the fence as is on the inside side?
Yes.
And then on the street side? make it-
Yes,
Okay.
the fence will just have the unfinished side facing the east property owner, which
Gotcha.
is not even visible from public right-of-way.
Okay,
But all the other sides, they will turn around, or they actually have already did that.
sure. Is there a motion for PC 2024-0801?
There's no public comments on this one? Or-
No.
Okay. Then I'll move that we approve the site plan for exception of the fence standards with conditions stated in this report.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right. I believe that motion passes. Okay, moving on. PC 2024-0802, Fayette Street Surface Parking Lot Site Plan Review. Ms. Wood, please proceed.
I'll have a short and a brief presentation on this particular matter. This came as a proposal from the school district late last year with the purchasing of the formerly known Presbyterian Church and two houses directly south, also owned by the church. And staff had a discussion with the school district and understanding that this is somewhat a little controversial. And then we went through the particular item for a parking demand study. Why do they need a extra parking lot here? What is it serving for? Then we went through all the design details over here. So in front of you, there is a brief memo from staff and the full application package, including the parking study memo and a stormwater study or letter, as well as the plan set. So over through this particular review cycle, we have determined that the existing zoning is R1B, which interprets as single-family residential compact. Per our code, it states that the R1B district provides residential living in compact, walkable neighborhood settings and supporting uses such as schools, church, parks, and other public facilities. So this particular surface parking will be used as an accessory facility to support the overall school functionality, mostly for everyday parking that it has been dedicated to staff and then 2 special events as they proposed by the applicant. And it also has been demonstrated in the parking study why they need this many spaces. I would like to go through a little bit of history of the school. I think everybody here probably knows more than about the school than I do, but the school actually was established in 1925. So for over 80 years, the school and the city have shared a lot of facilities, programs, and talents. And so both the school and the city have always been nicknamed North Tongue. This has been a big city school in a small town historically. So we have enjoyed the school being a centerpiece in Northland since 1925. And through 2016 to 2019, the school has gone through some significant renovation and expansion of the building and parking spaces as well to accommodate the staff and student needs. As of today, they have over 1,800 student enrollments and 160 staff for all the facilities that's located in North Kansas City. As is stated in Exhibit B, which is the parking demand study, the daily operating would have required, based off the number of attendees that has been enrolled into the school district and the number of staff, would require the school district to come up with more than 361 parking spaces as they have today. However, on the other side, if we were to use the zoning code to consider the number of seats that's been provided by assembly use, such as the football field and the basketball courts, that would have bumped the requirement, the minimum requirement, to 567 parking stalls. And these are off-street parking stalls, and the city is, currently the school is under the nonconformity for the number of required parking spaces by our own zoning code. So the school district have always been wanting to make the effort to add more parking spaces to accommodate these needs. Part of the reason is to relieve the burden for on-street parking for the neighborhoods nearby. So when staff reviewed this particular application, all the factors that's being brought into the consideration, including the traffic impact, the entryway, landscape, buffering, and conflicts of the uses, and the change of the characteristic of the neighborhood. Some of those particular items has been demonstrated in the staff report. We do believe the general design of this parking lot meets the minimum code requirement with the conditions being stated in the staff report. There are total 10 conditions over there, and I would like to go through some of the details if you would allow. The number 1 item is actually revise the plan to achieve a 0 increase in the impervious area, and that's actually a wrong statement. It's achieving 0 increase in flow rate per our Public Works Director's recommendation. And then number 2 condition over here is to talk about landscape buffer along the south property line, which is abutting an existing house, that the staff require and continuous dense evergreen vegetation to be added on top of that opaque fence that's being proposed by the school district. Number 3 is that all the proposed fence shall match what the school district current fencing materials look like. Number 4 is that no vehicle shall park in the parking lot between hours of 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. on any day of the week, to give the consideration that the school district wish to use this on a daily basis for accommodating staff parking, and also wanted to use this for special events such as the football and the basketball games. Those games could run as late as 10 o'clock p.m. And by the time when people getting out, we believe could be like about 11 o'clock at night. So therefore, we put down a midnight as a cutoff line that no parking shall be allowed after that. And the school district shall be responsible to erect the proper signs and enforce it. And number 5 is that the school district shall provide a design to allow only write-in and write-out from Fayette. And this is also a concern staff has currently. because Fayette is a one-way northbound street. We want to make sure people don't accommodate don't generate any conflicts on that particular street and create any dangerous situation for our particular residents over there. And number 6 is that the school shall enter into a good faith partnership with the city regarding an underground stormwater detention system. And I would like to talk a little bit about this one. This is for the future. The reason for that is the city is currently going through a particular study, a feasibility study, to take a look at the city's stormwater detention overall. And through this particular exercise, we learned there are some certain areas where we have some stormwater burden, and this is one of them. And we do have some ponding issues downstream, and we have some issues at this particular intersection of Fayette and 23rd. So the city has always been interested in putting some underground detention facilities in this area. However, it normally would cost you a fortune to put it under the particular intersection, and there are also complications from the utilities, the existing utility lines. So we have been looking for opportunities for the city to particularly enter into some partnership with private entities to see if we can do some upscale detention facility. As of today, which I got the particular information after this staff report was released, that we have a modeling with Olson Company as an engineering firm that told us if we were to put detention facility down here, it actually could significantly help this area and the downstream to relieve the impact from stormwater. However, we don't have the details of how big the facility needs to be, what needs to go into it. I'm just going to leave it there. So this is why this condition is kind of written in a very broad way to talk about in the future. If city determining this shall be necessary, then the school district should enter into good faith to work with the city, grant the city an easement for this particular facility. And then number 7 is that any future signage plan shall be approved by the city. Number 8 is that the lot consolidation need to be done before the certificate of occupancy. Number 9 is that if anytime in the future this particular parking lot is not under controlled or used by the school district to support their primary uses anymore, then the parking is no longer allowed because it is not allowed by the zoning district as a primary parking facility for itself. Then the owner shall be responsible to return it to a condition that is acceptable to the city for any future redevelopment. And then number 10 is that any future lighting plan should be proposed by the school district shall be approved by the city per the code requirement. So those are the general conditions we placed on this particular review process, and we anticipate to sort those out if you decided to make the motion to approve it. And other than that, I would like to just highlight one more item. I know I'm going a little bit longer than what I typically do on the presentation. I would like to state that the school district have hosted a particular community meeting in April, open to the general public to hear about their comments on this particular proposal. And after that particular meeting, the school district gathered information from the attendees and shared the list with the city. So the city has posted a particular sign for this case hearing on the property and have mailed out notification about this hearing case to property owners and residents within 185 feet of the subject property. And we have also tried our best to accommodate any needs that residents have brought up. One of those is that we have accepted written testimony. There are 2 written testimony has been received by staff as of today. Those have been included in your package right in front of you over there. If you have any question for staff, I'm open for those. Yep.
Thanks for the presentation.
Before we get into that, do we want to open it for public comment?
Can we clarify a couple things to help with public stuff? So the parking piece, the need for parking, it looks like the requirement by code is 567 spaces. If I'm understanding correctly, that is 1 space for every 3 attendees at the largest event, or is that 1 space per 3 seats in the largest auditorium?
It is 1 space per 3 seats.
So there's 1,700 seats in the largest auditorium in the school, is that correct?
That is what it has been included in the information of the submittal.
Okay. Have we checked that to confirm 1,700 in the gym? Or
I
whatever
have
that is?
not go to the gym and confirm that. That was an information being provided by the school district, and
The way the
have the school district here.
The reason I
do
asked, the
believe-
way the memo reads is it kind of throws out round numbers. Peak events host 400 to 1,700 attendees. I didn't know if that was seats or people standing or any of that. So do we have clarification from school board?
I would call the school district to, I would take the words from them to confirm whether they're attendees or seats, but our code
Code is seats, right?
state as seats.
Okay.
Correct.
I'd like to get that clarified. The other part is, if you weren't here when we approved the latest code, so like you may not know why, but could you offer some understanding for me why we need one space for every 3 seats? What's the
Sure.
thought there?
You're right. I was not here when the zoning reform was completed back in 2019. It was a particular activity, I believe, was done through the exercise of the master plan. And it has been largely debated about how do we set a parking ratio per different uses. And I can just go straightforward with you. Typically, most of the municipalities use the international zoning code to determine that, which is, some people call that IZC, and you heard ICC, IBC, all of this before. There is an international code council, and who publish all these international kind of codes, whether it's a building, zoning, or mechanical or electric. So most of the cities would take that as the first base and then adapt it to the regional needs based off what the parking situation look like, how many drivers they have, how much dependent they have on the particular automobile. And in our region, I have to say that 1 per seats is a very standard requirement across our region.
1 per 3?
1 per 3 seats, yes. That is a very standard requirement for assembly use.
Now, that would be standard across this region. Are we talking about like Liberty's doing that and downtown Kansas City's doing that? There's a lot of variety in
Correct.
the way, like a truly suburban area will have more space to put the parking lot.
Correct.
Here, it's a little tighter, a little more urban. Does that make sense? I guess in your professional opinion, you've done this for a while. Is 1 to 3 a good ratio for North Kansas cities?
So 1 to 3 seats is a very standard base. However, the parking ratio is not just one number. There are other layers required to it, such as in our own code, we have a parking credit component, which is basically say if you meet one of these requirements, we can give you deduction. Therefore, your minimum requirement is not this high, it's over here. So most of the time, I would say our parking code for the minimum requirement seems like a little bit lower than what people anticipate. Mm-hmm. And we are going to take a look at it and reevaluate it again with our upcoming master plan exercise. However, I do believe 1 per 3 seats seems reasonable. The reason I'm saying that is maybe in the very urbanized area, like for our citizens in our region, where it's more walkable, more accessible through the other transportation modes, you probably don't need to drive a car. But these particular assembly use, they are shooting for more of a regional attraction, such as district games, things like that. You will draw people from much outer skirt of this particular metropolitan area and our community. So those are the people really come on their cars and blame the region's public transportation. And I would just say that's probably where the big conflict comes from.
In the memo, it says the Kansas City zoning code requires 567. Is that correct, or is that a typo?
That is a typo. I would think it's North Kansas City.
Oh, I mean, that's an important clarification.
Yes.
I should know. I was one that voted
thank
it
you
in,
for-
but these codes are thousands of
No,
pages long.
thank you for pointing it out. That's definitely a typo, and I would claim that mistake I made.
So our code does require.
Our
that.
code
Okay.
requires.
Thank you.
And our code does state as you can use different criteria for a particular school use, but it's the greater one that is set to be the minimum requirement.
Thank you.
Follow up on that, though, is part of that is the distance to the venue too, right? I mean, otherwise, sorry, I said the part of that, though, is also, it has to be distance to the, or is that, do those parking stalls only count if they're adjacent lots, I assume? Like, are they 1 block, 2 block adjacent? I assume that's the other part of that, how you get to that count.
Right. So as accessory parking, generally, we would require the accessory parking to be located on the same lot with the primary use. However, for a campus-style development, like a school campus, you cannot achieve that. It is embedded in the neighborhood, cut off by the particular streets. So what you do look at is, does that located within the close proximity?
It is. I'm new again, back on the planning commission, but as far as when to ask these questions, I'm trying to refresh myself. It seems like this process has been going on a while, obviously with the school getting, not pressure, but a little bit of pressure to find more off-street parking, and I think this is the response. But I didn't know throughout the exercises of how this parcel was kind of decided on, or these parcels, was how much exercise went into looking at finding spaces along how on-street parking. And I know I've talked to different people, it seems like the street's wide enough, and there's just other ideas too to find other parking. I didn't know if, maybe not the right time to talk about it, but I didn't know if that was part of the analysis too, when this site was kind of picked as, hey, we can find spots here, but did we look at how, and we did look at some other on-street options too to find either that many or more. So anyways, I just wanted to bring those questions up. So.
Open her up. Do we need a motion to open public comments?
No, I don't think so. We can do it if it'll make you happy.
I mean, I don't know. Robert's rules, because we usually move to close public comments at some point. Yeah. Let's move to open the public.
I think we just declared open generally.
All right.
You can declare it open.
I declare
Wait,
public comment open.
Do you want to do?
So the school district is asking whether or not
Public,
you
yeah.
have questions for them
Pause.
for right now.
It's your meeting.
Yeah. So we're going to open public comment. School district is asking if they can go first. Is that what?
Do you guys want to go first? You can go after
Okay.
public comments, so
All
they
right.
can address all the questions. together.
We'll open public comment. Again, to reiterate, we're going to limit each comment to 5 minutes. And when you come up, please state your name and what was the other detail? Address. Thank you.
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Valerie Swearingen, 2408 Fayette. I did submit an email ahead of time. I wasn't sure if I was going to be here, but I wanted to add on to it a little bit and then also let my neighbors know. I'm here as both a neighbor of the church, and I'm also the president of the North Kansas City Historical Society, so my view is coming a little bit from that angle as well. I struggle a lot with this because Northtown was built on commerce. There's not a lot of residential property in the city. I don't foresee the city changing it to where we can move south of Armour. I mean, maybe someday, but for now, we really have to protect these residences that we have. There's, like I said, limited number of places to live, short of apartments, but as far as these old traditional homes go, I want to protect those. I would love to see if there's a way we could put in some, I think Jessica Loya may have suggested it's some sort of future planning, like if this sounds like it's going to happen, how can we protect homes in the future to maybe, as Commissioner Toll said, maybe think of other options first. However, to answer your question, I don't think the school district reached out to find this particular parcel. The church suggested it to them. So I don't fault the school district at all for what's happening here. And kind of tying to that, as Shu said, they're celebrating their 100th year next year. And from a historical standpoint, that is huge for our city, that we have this tiny neighborhood, 4 square miles, and we're so lucky to have such an amazing high school here. My youngest is going to be a senior, so I'm a little biased and a little sad about, not being as involved with the school, but I struggle with understanding that we want to have a good school in our neighborhood. We want to have them be good partners with us. We want us to be good partners with them. So trying to find a way to make all of that happen and keep everybody happy is very difficult. So what I put in my email to you all earlier was, is there some sort of a way we can add into staff suggestions, section 2, maybe where it talks about the landscape buffer? Is there a way they can incorporate some of the stone or the brick from the church that's being torn down into some sort of a feature that makes it look more of a neighborhood park versus just a commercial industrial parking lot? They've done it around the football stadium. There's the WPA fence along Howell has brick and stone incorporated. The new football field entrance has stone and brick incorporated. So it would still show the campus vibe that it is all part of the school district, so it satisfies that need. But then it also makes the neighborhood feel like it's a neighborhood. You know, have some parking benches or some trash receptacles, you know, because that's going to be an issue down the road. Just a way to try and make it more of a partnership. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is George Schluter. I live at 800 East 23rd Avenue with my wife. We bought our house in 19 before this all was happening. We are opposed to the idea of approving a parking lot at the proposed location on Fayette Street. I've reviewed the public documents. I'd like to point out that the city staff really has no vested interest in this because none of them live in the city of North Kansas City. You need to listen to the citizens and what they see on this. I don't think you should take their interpretation of the parking lot should be approved in an R1B district. I think that's something you have to decide, not the staff. Parking demand. The report shows that at best the school district would like to have more parking for special events, primarily basketball and football. The entrances to those two functions are on the north end of the school building and on the east end. This is on the southwest part of their campus. It's not needed for everyday school activities. The school was established a long time ago, 1925, well before there was any off-street parking requirements for any kind of building within North Kansas City. And they've had variances for that, and that, I think, should continue. There are many alternatives to building a parking lot at this location. One is they could enter into a lease with the Baptist Church to use their lot in these off times, evenings and Saturdays. They could develop parking along the south side, the north side of 23rd Street and the west side of Howell on their school property at Lorquet. And when I looked at it, they could do angle parking in those spots and probably gain 90 parking spaces without disrupting the large mature trees that are on the west side of North Clay. The comparison of the parking lot to the 21st and Howell one is not a very accurate, fair evaluation. That has commercial property to the south of it, to the north of it, and to the east of it when it was developed. So comparing a parking lot in a residential neighborhood to one that's in a commercial setting is not appropriate. We attended the North Kansas School District presentation on April 8th. In my opinion, we did not find the school district interested in any alternatives. They were full steam ahead to make this parking lot happen. And they said they were not interested in any alternatives. There are ample other alternatives than this. I ask you to deny this request. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Roxana White. My husband and I, Derek White, we live at 2110 Fayette Street. I'm not great at the logistical aspect of this, but I'm coming to you from an emotional aspect of this. My husband and I moved from the city to the quaint little Northtown just 2 years ago, and we were super excited to have a front porch to sit on and visit with our neighbors and be on a quiet street. We came from the Crossroads, which was bustling and busy,
and we were very excited to get away from that. And so that has quickly been just shattered from the standpoint of we're looking, our house faces that, so my front porch, my living room, everything is going to have a direct view of said parking lot. How we found out about it was just seeing things boarded up. We were never notified, so it's been obvious from the beginning that the school district doesn't have any concern as to what us residents feel, because they didn't even have the decency to notify us. If they did, somehow, we never got that. I sent an email to the superintendent at the time, didn't get a response. I've sent countless emails to the city, just letting them know, like, hey, homeowners care about this, we're upset about it, we want to see an alternative to it. But to this point, I do feel like it is a losing battle. I don't feel like we're being backed as homeowners. This has been used as training for the city, which I appreciate, the city training their first responders, and I have no issue with that at all. But that in it of itself has brought so much traffic and noise, and that's just going to be the tip of the iceberg once people are using it as a parking lot. So I just feel as a homeowner, the quaintness and everything that I was sold on to move to Northtown over other areas, I just feel like that's being stripped away. And I just ask you to think about, as you're making these decisions, to think about really the residents who are living here who will be impacted by that. So that's just it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Chelsea Snodgrass. I live at 2115 Fayette. For background, we will be the house that directly abuts this new development to the south. I did kind of want to go through address a couple questions that I had following your questions that I thought were insightful. Regarding the background of the school district, I do wonder if there has been any conversation about, they're talking about how all the expansion that's happened between 2016 and 2019, let alone over the last 100 years that the school has continued to grow. And you can't help but notice on the zoning map that this R1B zoning is applicable to a large percentage of our neighborhood. So if we're allowing accessory use because it's adjacent to the campus, is this parking lot now part of the campus? So across the street is also adjacent to the campus, and just to the south of that is also adjacent to the campus. I mean, it's clear that we are in a windfall of parking spots. So if we continue down this road and with this logic in mind that we need to accommodate for all of these spots, I don't see, if the commission approves this plan, what would stop it from approving any future uses in a very similar way. And with such a shortage of housing in our small community, I just don't think that we can afford as citizens, and you're our commission, to help protect our neighborhood, how we can move forward with that. Also, a large portion of these necessary parking spots seem to be coming from events that the school is hosting. And while I appreciate from even a safety perspective that we need to have parking available for, I do wonder about the same ratio question that you all have. But if a large amount of these parking spots are needed for game events, and we have events that start at specific times and end at specific times, have we explored moving parking and having busing system into these events? Like, does all this parking need to be adjacent to the school? Because if the parking has to be adjacent to the school, then it leads me back to my first question, which is if it has to be adjacent, then those parking lots will continue to grow in this R1B because all the parking must be adjacent. And so I don't understand how that will end up working for our community in the long run, and I don't see how, if we set this precedent now, we could stop it later. I also have the question about the comparison to the parking lot at Howell for the same reasons that Mr. Scher mentioned. That parking lot is surrounded by public streets on all sides and commercial property. This parking lot is going to abut my entire home. It is not even just the front of my home. It is my living room, my dining room, my kitchen. I have a small growing family. I have a toddler and a baby on the way. And this development will face all of our privacy will be gone. I will be looking at all points in time onto a parking lot. We would not have bought our home if we knew that that was going to be the case. And I don't know how else to protect the interests of my family, but implore you all to do so on our behalf. I don't see how that can possibly be allowed. And frankly, I even question in the plan, the site is capable of accommodating the building proposed use, access, and other site design, as it will not negatively impact the function and design or right-of-way of the adjacent property. That's me. I'm the adjacent property, and I am very negatively affected. My neighbors will also be affected, but I have to say maybe not to the same degree. The streets of the right-of-way, I'm very concerned about the safety of the individuals that play on that street, that ride their bikes on that street. I'm also concerned about, not to be constructed, maintained, or conducted in a way that produces noise, vibration, noxious odor, or material. Any visible light, glare, or other visible impacts different from allowed principal uses that are harmful, damaging, or disturbing to the adjacent property. How do you light a parking lot that faces all of my windows and not have light from those lights coming into my home? I don't know how I'm supposed to put my family to bed with parking lot lights at all hours. And if there aren't lights, that's its own problem. Right now we have a whole lot that's not lit at all adjacent to my home. So I just don't see how, even according to our own already pre-existing notion, this could possibly be allowed. And I am frustrated, but also imploring for help, because I don't know how else we could possibly stop this but asking you all to protect our interests as a family in this neighborhood. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Martino. I live at 2024 Fayette Street. And I don't have any prepared remarks, but in listening to what people have said, I'm just here to say that I agree with pretty much everything that has been said. And I think that the high school is indeed a gem. It's an asset. It's a very unique situation to have a high school of this caliber in an area like this. So I want to ask you to deny this request, because just expound on the uniqueness of the high school as it is. It's never going to have the required parking, nor should it. So I just hope that you have the courage to actually deny this application. And if you don't, then make them put up stone. That white plastic looks like shit.
Hi. Hi, my name is Quinla. I live at 2112 Fayette Street, and I've lived here for almost 9 years. I came to you guys to talk about the church and the two houses at the end of Fayette that the school wants to turn into a parking lot. So I feel this could lead to unsafe conditions that are unsafe on game nights. Sorry. They're unsafe on game nights when they host large events or anything like that will have an influx of people coming in. Our street is like an oriented family space where a bunch of kids come out and play, and their parents are always watching. We make like weird contraptions. We skate. We do like boat races with little leaves. But I want the kids that are younger to grow up with this same feeling of family and not have to be kept in by the fear of getting hit by a car or something that could be dangerous. And I don't want people to be scared to let their kids have fun and go outside and play like we did when I was younger. I also feel that it will be disruptive because construction is loud, and no baby, adult, or kid likes loud sounds. And loud sounds can lead to crying and stress, which might make some people want to move away or leave. I also think there might be some misconceptions about who's actually going to park there, and people will park there even at night, even if people tell them not to. I also feel that it'll be dangerous for people to walk their dogs at night
and at all hours of the day because people litter in the parking lots a lot. And some dogs will eat anything and everything they can get their hands on or paws on. And I just hope you guys have a great rest of your night. It's short and simple, sorry. My name is Quinn Loya.
Hello. My name is Jessica Loya. I'm that one's mom. I also live at 2112 Fayette Street, and I came here tonight to express my concerns regarding this project and to sort of help all of you understand the character of our little street, and to implore you to consider the ramifications of this project to the fabric of our community. When I first moved here, I never really expected to be so taken by the North Kansas City way of life. I remember I was still unpacking and settling in, and I had a restless 5-year-old at the time, and a little kid knocked on my door and was like, "Hey, can your daughter come out and play?" This sort of set the tone for pretty much every other year of her life that we've been here. The kids on our street tend to be out playing until the sun goes down and then reluctantly go home and then plan to do it all again tomorrow. I think that is one of my greatest fears is that, we have currently 8 children living on our street, being raised on our street, and then one more on the way over there. And of those, 4 of them are still young enough that they haven't gotten to experience that yet. I think my daughter touched on that she would really love for them to also be able to have that experience. Our street is, honestly, I would argue, one of the best in North Kansas City. We have an amazing community of humans. Hey, I see you. I'm sure yours is great too, but these people are amazing, okay? And I think, slapping a parking lot where there's now a church and 2 residential homes will undoubtedly change the character of our street. It will become less safe and secure, and this decision would literally erode the residential nature of our street. So now, getting sort of more into the details, I don't even understand how this parking lot can be considered an accessory use. So our street zoned R-1B, high-density single residential family district. That means that it cannot have vehicle parking as a primary use, and it also cannot have campus development. This parking lot is both. So I'm not quite understanding how that worked. So according to the city, for an accessory to be used or approved as an accessory use, it shall be compatible with the general character of the area and comparable to the uses of the property in the vicinity. It shall also not be constructed, maintained, or conducted in a way that produces noise, vibration, noxious odor, or material, any visible light, glare, or other visible impacts different from the allowed principal uses that are harmful, damaging, or disturbing to the adjacent property. So that being said, 1, how are we currently evaluating the compatibility and comparability in our city? And I would also like to point out that it is in our master plan to come up with a better way to do that. I do not believe that a parking lot is neither compatible nor comparable to residential houses. That doesn't make any sense to me. And I would also like to know, how a parking lot being built right next door to a family is not going to be disruptive. It's going to be harmful, damaging, and disturbing to the adjacent property. Beyond that, what is the environmental impact of continuing to build parking lots? So I'd like to mention that, and recently looking at the weather, I've kind of been tracking it. There is a heat sensor map. The Weather Underground uses a bunch of different radar stations. North Kansas City consistently sits 3 to 4 degrees higher than almost all of the surrounding areas, not including the city and certain areas in the city. It's a heat island effect, and the more that we continue to build these types of things, this is just going to continue to get worse. So the heart of this issue is parking. And on the district's end, I understand the high school is underparked according to city codes. On the community's end, there's been a lot of complaints and concerns about the overflow and students parking on residential streets. I have no understanding how a parking lot on a residential street intended for teachers during the day, events, and game day overflow is solving the community concerns about students parking in front of their houses during the day. And second, which I think Jesse was sort of touching on, maybe now is a really good time to review our parking
standards and consider what would actually be effective for a city of our size, and then alternatives to maybe this idea. So I'd like to say, like, it's not just controversial, as Sue said. It's directly contradictory to our city's vision and our standards as outlined in the city's master plan. In the section titled Zoning Framework, the recommendation for areas zoned R-1B states, the R-1B district should also be retained for purposes of protecting existing residential neighborhoods, but with more of a focus around those areas with the traditional neighborhood character area of the master plan. Sorry.
Any further comments?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Max Mosley. I live at 2115 Fayette with my wife, Chelsea. I know that it's been pointed out. I just want to reiterate that the school seems to be citing parking regulations as their justification for building this lot. But this proposed lot would not bring them into compliance. They would still be about 150 spots short of what they're required to have. So the argument that they're citing the code, the parking code that they need to have this lot, I don't really find that justifiable. I think that it will have a very detrimental effect to our neighborhood and will not achieve the goal that they are claiming that they're trying to work towards. So thank you very much.
Any additional comments? Do I have a motion to close the public comment period?
Move to close the public comment period.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Public comment is closed. Thank you to Ms. Swearingen, Mr. Schluter, Ms. White, Ms. Snodgrass, Ms. Martino, both Ms. Loyas, and Mr. Mosley for your comments. Appreciate that. Any questions, comments from the commissioners?
Are we expecting anything from the school board or from the North Kansas schools?
The school district has representatives over here,
Okay.
and you may call them for any comment from them.
The representatives from school district?
Good evening. I'm Brian Hochstein with MKEC Engineering. That's 11827 West 112th Street in Overland Park, Kansas. And we're doing the civil engineering and design for the school district.
And my name is Jeff Vandal. I'm Executive Director of Facilities with North Kansas City Schools. We're at 2000 Northeast 46th Street.
The school district, when they came to us, you know, we're engineers. So our job is to look at the solutions and how they fit within the context of a community. When we started on this, to be clear, it wasn't something they were actively seeking. It was an opportunity where the church came with the church structure and the two residences to the south. And so they came to them. The way that transaction worked, in fact, the school district paid them money for those properties, and the church turned around and gave that money back to the school district as a scholarship fund. So there was a very clear benefit to everyone involved at that point. We understand that as a campus, it can be very difficult. The school has been here a very long time. It's coming up on its 100th birthday, and you know it's difficult how things change over 100 years. I mean, it frankly makes things very difficult. This is the fourth expansion of parking that our firm will have done for North Kansas City Schools. We've also done 79 stall lot up in Norclay. We've expanded other ones against some houses. We were also the group that took the previous church down. So every time it is very difficult. I want to say we are very cognizant of that, and we are trying to design in a manner that has the least effect on the neighbors. That being said, I've sat exactly where you guys are as planning commissioner. These decisions are extremely difficult. I get it. we followed the codes and the ordinances prescribed by the city. And that is really, really hard for neighbors and people to understand that as we've gone through this step by step, we've met every requirement the city said. We've done parking memos and studies to even justify it. And at the end of the day, if this lot is built, we are still 150 stalls short for major events. On the flip side of that, we've tried to do a really nice product. We've worked with city staff to, there's landscaping on the north and the west. We've got an opaque fence on the east and the south. We're adding additional landscaping. We've worked through drainage reports. We've also offered to assist in any way we can with future detention if possible. So we're open to negotiating that. So it's a lot. I understand that. We're here for questions. I don't want to go and try and answer everybody's question. I know there's a lot of feelings and things too. We're happy to take commissioner questions one by one if there's specific things that we can help you address. But in general, we feel that the site plan meets the requirements as laid out by the city of North Kansas City, and that we agree to the stipulations that the city has placed forth with the revision of stipulation 1. Do you have anything else?
I'll fire away with one. Why not do an ingress egress off of 23rd versus Fayette?
That's a really good question. So when we look at it, Fayette is a one-way street, and I know there's been some concern about that. It's actually safer. By doing a signage and then working with the city on the one-way in and out, we have lots of options. So we can do a wishbone in and out, and it's basically a loop. So once you go into the parking lot, it reduces speeds. It keeps people from being able to turn and fly around. It also doesn't impede traffic on 23rd. Fayette, while used, is not used like 23rd. So 23rd has a higher traffic load, and so somebody turning into or turning out of is more dangerous than somebody looking only one way on a one-way street. So the safest way is to look left, there's no cars, and then proceed to the right.
I can see that, but where my concern would be, in fact, kind of what you just mentioned there, it is in fact a neighborhood street with low traffic, and now you are basically directing traffic to have to be there versus being on that. I'm not an engineer.
Well,
no. More of a main road, I'll say, on 23rd.
So yes, and the other thing is, no, it's a fair question. So there's that factor there. With us being at the end of the block and not the middle of the block, that does assist with it a little bit because we're at the end. Additionally, the way the lot is structured, you've got a longer north-south side and then a much shorter north side. There's an alley. There's also a street. It doesn't meet code to put an entrance. There's not enough distance, not enough sight distance between the alley to put another drive and then have Fayette. So putting another entrance off of Fayette, the drives are too close to each other. So.
Okay, I'll digest that. Thank you.
I did have one question. I just want to make sure my math is right. So when I look at the daily needs for parking spots for the school outside of special events, I got 120 student drivers, 163 total staff, 283 on an average day should be required, and we have 361 available. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we have on a daily basis in excess of 80 parking spots, excluding special events.
That's correct.
Okay.
I guess follow up to that one. Does that include the North Clay spots as well, though? 361.
It does, and the way we've structured it is that those spots are in there. We do have 19 dedicated spaces to North Clay for those staff and teachers.
Okay, those are the ones that are just completely dedicated to the 19. Okay.
Yep.
So what, and this might be in the application here, what would be the typical use during the school day for this? Would that be for teachers, students, guests?
With the location of this particular one on the southwest corner of the school and the access point to it, and the fact that that entry suits itself to teachers, a teacher lot during the day.
Okay, thank you.
Will that be permitted or first come, first served? So I stay away from the programming side of the engineering, so maybe Jeff can explain.
And we haven't got to that level of detail on that. We're just looking for a parking lot. But, right.
Jeff, are you able to clarify the seat capacity in the gym?
Yeah, so the gymnasium seating is bench-style seating, so it's not like they're individual seats. Our maximum occupancy per code is 1,700, and so we try to limit our ticket sales to 1,700, and so that's where we came up with that number.
Okay, having not been to a basketball game there, if you're at capacity and you've sold your 1,700 tickets, are typically people are seated? Are they standing everywhere?
So at 1,700, we start turning people away, but you're sitting pretty shoulder to shoulder on the bleachers, and some people do choose to stand, but in theory, there's space on the bleachers.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
My question, I guess, so just so I'm clear, I know that there's the accessory use deal, but this requires a zoning change. Is that right, or no?
No, so this would be an accessory use that truly lives with the North Kansas City campus, and that's one of the stipulations. You know, if North Kansas City School up and left in 5 years, this needs to go back to grass.
But did I hear, though, normally, though, the accessory would have to be on the site, is that what?
Your code allows for, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but it allows for a campus style, which is what North Kansas City is with adjacent properties and parking.
Even though the adjacent there, the campus has public streets through it.
Right.
I just wanted to ask, you said this was the 4th expansion. What is the time frame of that, and is there plans already in the future to expand further?
No, each time the school district has contacted us about constructing a parking lot, it's because they've had an opportunity to expand. They've had somebody almost every time approach them with property to sell adjacent. So for example, this exhibit's in there. This is the campus. That as we consider it, actually doesn't quite show the whole campus because the football field keeps going. But when we did an expansion here when a home was taken down. Same with down here when the church was removed. So it's not like an active, there's no real active planning. When there's an opportunity for them to get closer to that mark, they look at it.
I mean, I guess I think, though, that's not to editorialize, but I mean, it seems like that's the problem, though, is that it's done ad hoc. And that, we all love the school. My kid's going to be a freshman there. My other son's he's going to be a freshman at the year after that. And we know it's a huge asset. We know that the city needs the school and appreciates the school. And I think the school's gotten too much grief for on-street parking. I lived in neighborhoods with on-street parking. I don't understand the beef with on-street parking. But it just seems like when you talk about the campus and you look at it, it sure seems like how there's a lot of available on-street, just like George said there earlier. I don't know if that's been looked at or been rejected, but it does just from a aerial. I mean, I don't know if there's any way to steer back to maybe a better solution that's more, helpful to everybody. But this lot does stick out as not like the street it's on, and then it just doesn't. It doesn't even. It's not contiguous the way these other lots even have been done. I don't know. Anyways, it seems like, it's probably, the ship has probably sailed, but it just seems like there's a better way to probably get there and make everybody happy on, get the school enough parking, get, especially for events, and more centralized, and same for the civic district. And anyways, that's my concern there.
We certainly would state that it's a unique situation. We also assist the school district at all their other schools. We do not have this problem at the other schools in any way, shape, or form. And if you looked at them, you'd look at the massive sea of parking that's empty on a school day and scratch your head.
Staley's 50 acres or 100
Yeah,
acres, 200,
yes.
150 acres, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Jesse.
You mentioned through your work and looking into all the code requirements that you feel the lot meets those requirements. So I wanted to ask you about a couple right here. So 2A is the one that talks about detrimental impact to the adjacent properties. It says it would not negatively impact the function. That's the word I'm underlining here. So when we talk about function, we've heard from some of the neighbors. Functionally, it would, in my view and in hearing from the neighbors, it would impact, and I would say negatively impact them. Could you speak to how you see it meeting the code requirement of not negatively impacting?
Sure, yeah, you know, in planning, it's always difficult. It's a two-way street. Like, so if we have a neighbor that has a residential home that's not taking care of their property, it impacts the school district. So it is a very difficult thing when you're this close to our neighbors. The way we read it and the way that we've approached that is that we have a responsibility to follow the code to install the proper landscape screening, the proper mechanisms to, within your code that explicit, hey, we're putting this use that is parking next to residential, and this is what we're required to do. So that's kind of, I don't want to say it's a math equation or keep it that simple, but that's how we meet 2A is by following that code to satisfy those requirements. As you know, and then as far as a detriment, our perception is, you know, we have been asked to get cars off the streets. So the challenge, there's a lot of challenges to that as well, and a lot of mandates that we hear, and that's how I would answer 2A. Yep.
Thank you. Second piece, 2D. So design being compatible with the context, considering the location, relationships of other buildings, open spaces, public streetscapes. I will give you major kudos. The lot that you mentioned on Howell Street between 21st and 23rd, I think you did a great job with that. Design is fantastic. The landscaping is wonderful. That one, as a couple people have pointed out, is more consistent with the surrounding uses. You got a lot for the library, you've got some open space, you even have this lot is pretty much adjacent. How do you see D fitting in when everything around it is either a residential home? Well, three sides are residential homes.
Right. Yeah. So abutting an alleyway and being, I know it's not due south of the structure, but there is a crosswalk immediately to the northeast where the teachers would be able to access. And so the location of it, I mean, if this were even a couple blocks down, it really doesn't make sense. It's the fact that it is adjacent to the corner of the building there, and then that it is achieving the easing of on-street parking. I mean, those are the couple big things on this. The limited lot area is a big part of this. I mean, there's not property available. And so when the opportunities come, we look at how we can make them fit as best we can, understanding the impact to the neighbors. We really do. As part of the site plan process, and you guys may want to look at changing that, we're not required to have a community meeting. I don't understand why. But we did sit through that process. There's also the balance. You know, we've heard a lot of things about the level of stone and brick and other things. There's also a budget. And the budget does take away from other things when we've got to factor all that in. So we're trying to find the best value where we're meeting the code, doing something that looks good. There's a lot of moving parts. Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess I always like to ask the applicant, have you read all the recommendations and conditions in the plan? And do you believe you'll be able to achieve all those and are fine with the conditions as described?
Yeah, and we've worked with the city on those, yes. Yep.
Okay, okay, it's always good to.
The stipulations we agreed to, yep.
Okay, thank you, that answers that. I'm good for now.
Does anybody have other questions before we share thoughts?
I have a question regarding the traffic flow on 23rd in Fayette. Has the school district done any sort of traffic study to know primary means of ingress, egress to get to the school for students, those who do drive? In the report, it says, and I've lost the number. There's a good number of kids that get bussed in, good number of kids that walk to school, but there's, plus or minus 360 drivers. Do we know how they get to the school in the mornings, leave in the afternoons?
The short answer is no. And I would say that is reflective of what the school district tries to do. It's not like they're even encouraging busing, but path of least resistance to get to school is important. And I don't want this to sound like a cop-out. It's when you have traffic studies are based on usage, and typically it's an increase of 100 trips per hour, and our parking lot has 48 stalls. So it's one of those weird math things where we could do it. I would argue that in North Kansas City, given the where this school sits within the school district, they're coming from everywhere. So.
And keep in mind, we're looking at this as a staff lot, so this would be primarily adults coming in and out.
Sure.
And
But we don't know where they're coming from either.
Not necessarily.
Do we have, I mean, it'd have to be mostly north of us, I guess. Do you know what percentage of students are from North Kansas City or staff or anything? I guess I'll just tackle that. If we have data on just how many are residents or North Kansas City proper? No? Sorry.
I don't have
I-
that information
okay.
here, no.
Thank you.
I do have one other site plan question. I walked through there a couple times this last week. I believe it shows, if I'm reading the little squiggly curves right, there are 3 mature trees on the north side and 1 on the west side. Was the plan to keep those?
The plan is to keep the trees there now. So here's where I'm going. Those trees, so I'm a landscape architect by trade.
Okay.
Those trees have about 15 years best case scenario left in them. So we are supplementing with new trees in between the trees to try and get 15 years of growth so that when they do hit that life limit, they can come down. But we definitely want those trees day one, hopefully 5 years, hopefully 10 years. But when they start to deteriorate, that's when the school district would remove those trees.
The reason I ask is we have kind of a not such great history as a city of cutting down mature trees and putting in some little bitty 4-inch caliper trees and hoping and praying that they make it through the next 2 years. And a lot of times they don't, and nobody ever comes back and really takes care of that. But I just wanted to be clear that your intention is to keep them.
Well, yeah, and so if you look at the landscape plan within the packet, you will see those trees as existing trees remaining with supplemental trees, shrubs, and other landscaping included. Yep.
Just advocate for one more thing here. Trees with larger canopies as well, if we were to move forward with this project, as someone mentioned the heat island effect and the increased temperature here anyways. And I know it's tough to figure out how to grow super large mature trees in the middle of concrete. It's just not the most conducive growing environment in the world to begin with. But if possible, anything with a larger canopy just to cover more. I know I've harped it on other parking projects around here. And trying to get it in code. We have not got it in there yet.
Yeah.
But
So on this particular site, islands, I call them death islands because things don't make it.
Yeah.
So it's primarily on the edges. We're using larger species of trees.
Yeah.
And then the goal is always with the school district. Jeff likes when I make it as low maintenance as humanly possible. So that is the other goal. And then there's lots of factors that we put into it. Species and stuff, I don't want to get in the weeds too much. We pick things like sea green junipers. When he pushes his snow loaded with salt into those, sea green, they're along the ocean, so they can take the salt load. So the planning of the plants is very intentional of what we're trying to do out here. Yep. And frankly, he wouldn't want the islands, but we have them and we're putting trees in them. So But yeah, it because of, not because he's evil and doesn't want ornamental trees, but because he wants to be able to push his snow really easy.
I have, to confess some ignorance, no kids, so I don't know how many school nights there are in a year anymore. It's been a long time since I've been in high school. How many days are we expecting that lot to be used during the school year and then during the summer and winter breaks? Do we have a good sense of that?
Do you know what that number is, Tammy?
Yeah, I think that's reflective of what we could observe during the summer. Those lots that are adjacent to the high school are fairly empty. So it's not this is not a project that is going to activate the neighborhood, right? Like it's something that is going to be empty part of the time just by the nature of what it is. Do we have any, like there might be posts with like chain links on them for the existing lots for when they're not in use. Is there any sense or plan around access control? Or
we are not planning for any access control in the lot. No.
But it's going to be fenced in on 3 sides, 2 sides?
So what we've got is a landscape buffer on the north and west sides. We thought that would be more attractive. It's about 10 feet wide with grasses and shrubs. And then on the south east is a 6-foot tall, solid white opaque fence, similar to the one that you've seen between 21st and 23rd. Additionally, the city's asked us to put additional landscaping on the south, and so we're looking at how to best do that. We did hear from that homeowner tonight. It is very tight. Their property is approximately 1 foot 8 inches from the property line, so we've tried to be cognizant of that, move our fence 3 feet north so that it can be maintained. But now we're trying to figure out with the landscaping, if we put landscaping inside the fence on the north side, nobody sees it. So, but it's in the code, so we'll do it if it's required. So
In the recommendations, I believe, it talks about the size of those trees being approximately 6 feet. And maybe this is a question for staff as well, but I'll take answers from anybody. With an average of 6 feet minimum height, is that at full growth or when it's planted?
Planted. So your guys' code reads as diameter of the tree when it's deciduous, and then height of the evergreen tree when it's installed.
Okay.
Yep.
So is there, it's a tight site, and with the proximity to the neighbors, particularly to the south, there's not a lot of room for additional buffer there. If there was additional buffer between the parking lot and the house to the south side of the parcel, how many spots is that losing, and is that something that is negotiable?
So on the south side of the property, we have pretty much split the difference. We usually do about 2 feet of minimum distance from the curb, and this will be a full curb, making sure that those wheels stop. And that 2 feet to the fence face, that's your bumper, that's your overhang. Vehicles have gotten larger, sometimes the fence gets taken out. So that is what we want to be, at least 2. Our goal is usually to be about 3. The fence on the south side of the property could potentially shift a few feet to the north. The landscaping could then move outside to the south of the fence. I'm designing with him here. I'm being smacked. And we could look at then buffering the fence on the south face with landscaping, a landscape bed. Now, that bed, we'd want to, those feet matter. So from our fence right now to the building, to the house to the south, is about 4 feet 8 inches. That's it. We put the fence there because that's where the existing property owner has their privacy fence, but we still need to maintain our property. So that might be an option. And there are good species of plants that get tall and are very narrow, and you put a lot of them in. And so you could do like a Canartii juniper. That's a 3 foot wide evergreen tree. Comes in at 6 foot to start, tops out at 25 feet. Skyrocket, little 3 foot. Every 3 feet, you put one in. That would be an option.
So I just counted, because precision is important. There's 10 spots to the south. Are these compact spaces, or are they're going to be standard size?
So in the past, the lot we were talking about earlier between 21st and 23rd, it was really tight, really difficult, really tight drive lanes. This one we were able to get a little bit wider. We're still like at the minimums. I mean, minimums for what we're comfortable with drive lanes. Part of that is the fact that it's basically, it is a one-way. We intend to sign it when you come in. You're going to make a loop, and you're either going to find a parking spot and go around again, or you're going to go out of the parking lot. And so that's kind of the extent. So there are not necessarily compact stalls, but they're already, right at the minimum length of stall and width of stall. Yeah.
So I think what I'm trying to get at is losing those 10 stalls in order to create more buffer between the parking lot and the adjoining, or the adjacent property to the south, is that feasible? Is that something that puts the project?
It's 38 spaces now.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's 48 spaces as it is. That's still not getting us to the parking minimum. So,
Yeah, I think for us, it's a math equation. It's to get as many stalls on here while still meeting all the codes, absolutely. And so I don't, it's already going to be a very expensive per stall lot, to be frank. We don't get good efficiency until we start putting a lot of stalls in. So, I mean, you can answer how you want. I just wanted to point out that.
Yeah, we definitely have to look at the price per stall, and if we're only getting 38 stalls out of there, that almost doesn't seem worth the effort, you know. Like I said, we're trying to be a good neighbor. We're trying to solve a generational issue that we've been dealing with for years, that the city has been dealing with for years. And so I think it's in everyone's best interest to maximize the number of stalls there.
yeah, just to clarify, I do not have the authority to ask you guys to do that. I'm just exploring a scenario here.
But I would reiterate, we can definitely look at that south side to see, use every inch of that to see what we can do on the south side.
You were just saying, though, you could push the lot, essentially skinny up the landscaping on 23rd and push the lot north, maybe. That's the other way to, if you kept the same count, but you could create a little more buffer there.
Well, what I was trying to say is, I want to be very clear on, so the fence on the south.
Yep.
Right now, the city's asking us to put the landscaping to the north of it to satisfy the requirement.
Yeah, I understood that.
Which nobody's going to see it.
Yeah.
If we potentially move the fence another 3 feet, then bring the landscaping down, we hopefully keep that buffer there, and then also have the landscaping on that. On the north, I think what's really nice about what we've done to the north and the west is it's just very heavily landscaped. That stuff grows at least 3 feet tall. It creates a true buffer for the parking lot, and that's what we're trying to do with the grasses and the shrubs. Yep.
I have one maybe final question, and I don't know if you can predict, but what would be the school's options if this is not approved for parking? What would the next steps be for the school?
So I think there would be discussions at a higher level than me. That would be a conversation with the school board, what they would want to do with that property. It's not like we are actively seeking a lot. So it's not like if we can't build here, we're going to seek out other houses or other properties. This was just an opportunity for us to address an issue. But as far as what would happen to that property, I think that would be a school board discussion.
If nobody else has questions for the district, I share some thoughts.
Okay, do we let them?
You guys have closing remarks? You want?
No, we just appreciate the opportunity. We understand the position you guys are in, and we know that it's never easy, and we do empathize with our neighbors. We want to be a good neighbor. It's just the uniqueness, I believe, of this particular situation. The goal of the school district to add parking to try and deal with that generational problem and do it within the city codes as efficiently as possible. So,
thank you. Thank you. Before we get to comments,
Yep.
do we want to staff questions? Do we have anybody have questions for staff? I have questions for staff. How long has the high school been out of compliance with the parking requirements?
99 years.
So that depends on when the zoning was reformed. So we
That was
do-
2019?
No, our most recent code was 2019.
Okay.
But we do have I believe, don't quote me on this one because I don't really know what was the last zoning code before the 2019 one. I have to do a little research on it. But the last zoning code I know for sure, they do have a requirement on minimum parking. And I would believe the school district did not meet the requirement at that time. So it has to be for a significant amount of time. However, it is non-conforming,
Right.
and it does also involve the change of the use and the expansion of the program. So say they have 1,700 seats today, which 10 years ago, they probably didn't have that many at that time. So we'll probably have to track down a little bit more to get the clear answer on how long they've been in non-conforming for parking requirement.
Yeah, with the addition of the IB campus and the new basketball stadium.
Correct.
So, okay. Last-ish question, probably. Can you bring some clarity to the question of what qualifies as a campus? Is that explicitly named in the code? Or is that, when does a newly acquired parcel become part of the campus rather than property owned by the district?
So in our code, our municipal code, there is no definition of what is a campus-style development. But however, this particular term is used to determine that an accessory use could be allowed for not, when it's not located on the same lot with the primary use. That's how the code specifies it. So really, when we do campus style determination, we do a research on what is the campus style, and we all know Cerner is a campus style. So generally what it say is you actually do have different lots with different primary buildings and serve a different kind of functionality that all kind of serve the primary use as of this, as a school, particularly in this case, and which could be cut off by different public streets or even private streets. So they laid out, they're separated on different lots, so that how we determine as a campus style. And if you do go look at the school history over there, they do kind of mention they're actually an open campus style school when they were first established. So we take all those information from the historical literatures and try to interpret whether or not this is a campus style. I believe to staff this is pretty clear it's a campus style because it has several different facilities, including North Clay and it's also other parking facilities that's kind of spread it out by different and cut out bisects by different streets. So we do, and has an open access from the general neighborhood. So we do believe this is a campus style over
Well,
there.
let me pick on Cerner because they're not here right now. So let's say Cerner buys a property on Burlington, and they want to add something, a building or a parking lot or a park, whatever they want to do. Is that lot then a part of the Cerner campus?
That would
is
not
it
be
how important is adjacency or connectivity to
Right.
inclusion in a campus?
I think that is a very good question. How do you count toward as this is one big complex instead of being spread it out? How far does the distance will play a role over here to determine it? There is nothing in the code to say, 300 feet, 500 feet, 600 feet. And larger, that has something to do with their circulation, both for pedestrian and vehicular. How do you circulate? If from where Cerner currently, or Oracle, that currently locates, and to look at Burlington, I think that is a pretty easy determination for anybody to say you don't constitute a campus style and you don't support this particular function as a campus style.
Gotcha.
I think those are good questions, and some from the public tonight. You don't build parking for the sake of parking. You do it to address a demand or a need for it. So the count that they're required to be, that account was applied to the school after the school was there, basically, right? There aren't a lot of uses that you would say that about, where the count was established kind of retro after the school was already there, when the school's enrollment could have been 500 when it was opened, and now it's 1,800. I thought a couple years ago it was only 1,500 or 1,600. So, and I know it's dipped and then it's gone up, and North Clay's use changes almost yearly, which is cool that the school district can use that building to accommodate different uses. But sometimes it's sometimes it's grade schools, sometimes it's ESL. the uses and the enrollments are going to keep changing. I think it gets into, I don't think you say, well, we want to do more parking because there's a certain count we have in our codes that are kind of ambiguous or they're applied to this kind of arbitrarily. I think you want to do it to address the need, the real demand, and if there's a real issue. And this issue seems to be on-street parking annoying people, even though that's where cars go, is on streets. But that's a more subjective thing versus, is there really a shortage of parking? And is that addressed by doing more on-street or off-street parking? I don't know. I feel weird on this one because I think the school district was trying to do what it thinks is right. And I don't think it's trying to hurt the neighborhood, but it's clear that obviously structures are going to be torn down next to people's houses and replaced by a surface parking lot that's going to be empty half the time. So that's kind of it's a tough one. Planning commissioner.
I would agree with aspects of that, because I would say when I started on council 7 years ago, and I think 5 years ago as well, that was one of the top complaints when you were going to doors, especially Gentry. More I'm seeing to come from that area. It's like there's teachers, there's students, a lot of us teachers too, parking on the street. And I had commentary one time like, this lady, she couldn't have her Bible club at her house during the middle of Wednesday or whatever because all the spaces. I'm like, well, it is public parking. And so I know the school's reacting to those sort of complaints that were coming up. And so I will say at least appreciate them looking through and trying to solve because Tammy, I know, has been in some of these meetings with multiple council members now and multiple mayors over, trying to help solve kind of a localized neighborhood issue there. And with the redevelopment, of course, that changed everything because you took the parking lot from the north and then more people parking on 26. And, the patterns have changed, and it's a problem that's been around since the school opened. You can go back and read any of the old minutes or old annuals, and you will see annually numerous parking complaints around the high school. But no, I certainly see how the school district got here based on those, some of them very tense meetings with council members over neighborhood parking.
Jesse, I cut you off earlier.
Oh, you're fine. No, I've got a whole list of notes here, so I'll start rolling and you cut me off if I go too long. So first, I'll thank you, everybody who came out. This is amazing to see public engagement on a planning commission meeting. This isn't even a council meeting. This is great to see people come out, and I also want to acknowledge I believe this is a good faith effort by the school district to address a decades-long problem. This was an opportunity that arose, not something you jumped on, tried to reach in and grab some property in a residential neighborhood. It came to you in a very opportunistic way. With all that said, I've heard from people for months and months and months since this is the first board went on one of those houses. People have been calling. I've held community forums, and the consistent feedback is, please, please, please don't let this happen. Now, I don't vilify the school in any way here. Some people have vilified the school. Some people have been very upset, very emotional, and I understand why. But I don't think there's a villain scenario here. I do think what we have is a bit of a solution seeking a problem to justify it. And so backing into the parking minimum, the 567 spaces being based off the maximum capacity of the largest auditorium for special events. Currently, we're 206 spaces out of that. With this, we would still be 158 out. Like, we're not really moving the needle that much. So I really don't see the need for this lot being well supported. I think it's an opportunity, but it's something that, okay, we've got this opportunity, now we're going to find a reason to do it. And then kind of zooming out, rather than nitpicking the design pieces, each one bit by bit, which we can do if we get to that level. I look back at the two sections of the code that I asked Brian about, and Brian, thank you for your answers. You've clearly lived this, and you've been digging in deep. 2A, I think, based on feedback from Roxana, Chelsea, Max, and the lawyers, this would be very detrimental to just day-to-day life. People talk about moving to North Kansas City. The reason you come here is you can sit on your front porch and you can see the street, you can speak with your neighbors, your kids can play. I've seen kids grow up playing on these streets. It would be detrimental. We're looking at a one-way street, a very narrow one-way street. And, I understand the left turn piece. Avoiding a left turn is a great engineering design choice in most scenarios. In this one, we're shoehorning a lot onto a one-way street and hoping that people who park there most coming from outside the area are going to realize it's a one-way street. And I worry that they wouldn't. So again, detrimental. I don't think there's any amount of landscaping we can put between a house that's 1.5 feet away that's going to mitigate the impact of that house. The lighting, you can buffer it any way you want, but it's still going to be getting in their windows. And then 2D, I think the argument was well placed with the lot that's here along Howell. That is consistent, and I think that was well received. I mean, people still were upset the church is being torn down. I get it. But it is open on 3 sides. This would be surrounded by very dense residential properties. And I just don't see the consistency here. So I think it does fail to clearly meet 2 parts of the requirements. So I'm going to suggest that we deny the approval of the plan here. And then we have an open discussion about moving forward. How do we not get to this situation again where we talk about why we have parking minimums that we can't really make sense and articulate, drilling down into what should parking minimums look like? Do we need them in a walkable residential neighborhood? And as Ryan has asked a number of times, can we look at other off-site areas? Could we bring people in other ways? Our master plan focuses on alternate transit methods. A lot of this does run counter to what we're trying to do. And the site plan process, as you mentioned. We don't have this requirement. You kind of did go the extra mile, which we appreciate, but it's something that I think we put in the code. And then one glaring piece is we have to get accessory parking out of single-family residential zones. It just doesn't make sense. So I'm open to hearing other thoughts from the commissioners, and then we'll put a motion down.
Yeah, I want to add a few things, which I think I feel better about saying. I think I've heard them a lot, and so it kind of reinforces what I wrote down nights ago about this. I do believe it violates 2B. I don't think there is good planning with avoiding unnecessary removal of existing natural features. There's a lot of grass when you walk through that area right now around the houses and everything. Flipping that to parking, I think it was mentioned earlier, the heat island effect for those of us that live here, if you go walk through at night, it's hot. It's getting hotter. Every time we put in another parking lot, it just makes it worse. So we need to be very creative and very forward thinking about that from an impact to those who live here. I think it violates 2D. I don't think it's compatible to the relationships of other buildings, open spaces, and public streetscapes for all the reasons that have been mentioned. I do think we really need to protect our R1 zones for the limited residential we have. But the way I thought about it earlier, if I was running this as a business, and I had to present to an executive board, like, you want me to spend this very valuable resource we have, an R1 housing area for parking, okay, what do we get out of it? And that's where I was running the numbers, and it didn't make sense that we have, on a daily basis, we need 283 parking spaces. We have 361. So we have excess of 80 a day. I've driven to the high school for an event on a day, middle of the day, found a place to park, no problem. I think we're going to have to get creative and think about something besides a big parking lot. I think it was mentioned earlier, for these extra events, the basketball games, the football games. I don't think parking lots are going to fly for that here in North Kansas City. This would be the fourth one that we've built since I've been on the Planning Commission. And every time I walk by one of those, I really dread and regret that we built those. But I do believe we've done enough with the parking lots we've met to meet the daily use. I don't think we should add any more for extra events. I think the only other thing I would add to that is just some of the concerns that have been mentioned about the zoning and the parking minimums. We've got to address that. It's bitten us several times now, and it always comes up after the fact. We're trying to look at it way too far downstream. That needs to be an upstream process where the zoning and the master plan helps address it and get a better process in the first place. That's all.
I mean, I'm very new to all of this. I'm a resident. I've been here for 3 years only. But I just I don't know the codes other than I read through them very quickly. But I agree that, not just with our city trying to push forward, but just in terms of where the world is going, that we need to be more creative in our transportation methods, and that we need to look forward to public transportation. I mean, and if you just look at this campus picture, like, there's so many parking lots here, and then you also have the Mackin parking lot, like, that's adjacent to this campus, basically, and I don't know why that can't be more utilized. It's not full at night at all. I walk in Mackin every day. And I agree, I'm just saying that I agree mostly that we need to protect what little residential housing we have here. My house is a pain in the butt, but like I really want to keep it alive and going. And I'm very, what is the word I want? I like to respect the environment. My house has a new native landscape to try to combat, some of the negative climate impacts that people and cars are creating anyways. And parking lots are just not, they're not attractive. And like, I think Brian, you had said earlier, it's not bringing anybody in here. It's just going to be another empty space that's not attractive. And like, if we keep adding parking because we're going to be so low, because we're still not meeting the minimum that they're asking for, like, I just fear that there's going to be more, just as I believe Chelsea had said, if we don't stop it now, what does the future look like? Thank you.
Yeah, so to piggyback off of Commissioner Spencer, the language of criteria D is the overall design is compatible to the context, considering the location and relationships of other buildings, open spaces, and public streetscapes. So I think what's catching me is that this is, for better or worse, an urban high school campus. It has always been that way. And I don't think that adding additional parking contributes to that. And in fact, I think it changes the character of the neighborhood pretty substantially, not just for Fayette Street, but for that whole side, this side of town of Howell and Iron. And so I think on the grounds of D and B, again, B being removing landscaping that's already existing, that to me is enough for denial. That's my perspective.
Do we want to do a motion?
I'm not a very smart person, but it sounds like the numbers are going towards no here. If I'm counting correctly, that's 4. So a technical question for Shu then. What, on a denial, because we are the final say on this, right? But then there's an appeal as well, but that would be to the city council, correct?
So if you recommend denial on this one,
Yeah.
the school district has an option to appeal it to the city council.
Okay.
They can, of course, choose to
That's
not
what-
to do so.
Sorry, maybe you had that in here, but yeah, that's what I was trying to understand. Okay. Yeah, I really don't have anything to add. I'd just say, I appreciate the school district working through a solution here as well, and I appreciate Quinn speaking to the kids playing on the street as well. My kids have been down there many times. It's a very fun street with lots of skateboarding and fun things going on as well. And so appreciate you speaking and always willing to step up and do it. I know it can be tough, but you never hesitate and you get right up and rock that mic every time. So appreciate you coming up. With that, yeah.
I was going to make a motion unless there's any other comments. I move that we deny approval for the site plan on North Kansas City Schools Northtown Campus accessory parking lot at the southeast corner of East 23rd Avenue and Fayette Street.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Is that the right one?
Yeah.
All right. All in favor of denying the application or the approval of the site plan, say aye.
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 Aye. I think that means it's denied. Okay. So we've got a few more pieces of business, comments from staff.
Sorry, I was distracted
Yeah,
by
me
the
too.
noise behind me. We don't have any additional comment. Other than that, we do have a board banquet coming up on August the 15th. Hopefully, everybody could be there. Unfortunately, I'll be out of town that week.
Oh.
So I'll catch up with you guys afterwards. We do have a couple new commissioners here, so we'll anticipate some maybe training materials for the next meeting. And I do hear, not just once or twice, a lot of times, about reviewing our parking requirements there. So maybe I would suggest we can probably put a discussion item for our next agenda to take a look and see what are our current parking requirements over there. And we can go from there.
I think that would be a good idea.
Sounds good. Thank you all.
Thank you. Comments from commissioners? Mayor DeLong.
I just want to welcome Hannah to the commission and welcome Ryan back. I know it's been I don't know how many years, few years since you've been on, but welcome back and look forward to working with you all as we continue to move forward. Thank you. Oh,
Further
sorry, I'm used to
comments?
calling them.
Yeah. For that future meeting agenda, could we add a few things about, like, not only the parking minimums, like discussing those, how we get to them, and what makes sense for our community? Can we also talk about the site plan process that would require community feedback? Not just posting a sign, but like actually have the applicant sit down with the folks, not just in a meeting like this, but before that meeting happens.
But can I clarify on that? Would that, because there's really two paths kind of for site review, right? Site plan review. Some are administrative and we never see. Only certain ones planning commission sees. So would you be asking, okay, generally just the ones that come to us?
Ones that
Okay.
would come to us for a special request type thing.
Yeah.
And then getting rid of parking in R1B or R1 in general, or even, I guess, residential. Like, why? Talking about not having parking lots in residential spaces. Now, if there's good reason for it, again, that would be part of the discussion.
We can start with seeing what is in the code right now.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
go from there. That's why I suggested.
My struggle is
Examining
that
that.
we keep backing ourselves into these corners where we say, well, they bought it before the code was changed, and now we can't say no, and if we do, we could get ourselves in trouble. We did it with the Oxbow, which I'm not sure if that was before your time, but there was a rule about adjacent properties being considered and what qualifies for adjacent. Things that, like, we've learned the lesson, but we haven't codified it. And I want to be able to codify it so we can say the code doesn't allow that anymore.
We could definitely explore the option over there.
Okay.
That's a good one because that's definitely a struggle on these. Like,
The re-
if
I'm-
the
I
use is
don't-
good and we're
yeah.
saying the use is good, then you're kind of locked.
Yeah, you can't say no.
Yeah, there's really no legal basis beyond use, and then you are just pure doing a site plan review, and that's it.
And I don't
But-
want to make you feel
yeah.
like I don't care about this part. It's just, it has a lot of layers to it. It would be fairly complicated to spend this much time at this. We can go till midnight if you guys want.
No,
We can go
not
through
right
that.
now.
We'll start fresh another evening.
Yeah, future
I would be
meetings.
happy to.
Whether that's a discussion item at a council meeting or a future agenda item for the planning commission or both, I think it's something that we need to nail down sooner rather than
I
later, because
understand
this sort of stuff will keep coming up. Whether it's parking in R1B or parking minimums for an apartment building that's yet to be built, those kind of things.
And the reason I recommended to look at that after or during the time when we're examining the master plan is because the master plan will recommend future land use. So the parking requirement typically go hand in hand with the use itself. As of what we have right now, zoning reflects existing land use largely. However, we don't really have a particular recommendation of future land use from our existing master plan. It would be more adequate and be more step forward thinking when we look at the parking requirement after we do engage of what the city want for the future uses.
I understand, like, getting a bigger picture, holistic plan, but, like, could we feasibly put an agenda item to get rid of any accessory parking in R1 next? Like, could we put that as a discussion item for
You
the
can
city council?
absolutely not put that language in the code like that because any houses would have accessory parking as well.
I mean,
So this is why we have to kind of codify it in a more
Right.
cautious way to tailor toward a particular need.
I got
But
you.
yeah, I can totally explore the option and how we could talk about amending the code. So this particular issue doesn't come up. But as far as I see, this is why we actually do have a site plan process for planning commission to weigh in that because this is a non-residential use in the residential district, so you get to see that particular, and for the significant amount of the non-residential use, and it's a close proximity, you get to see this particular site plan, and you can weigh in. But yeah, we can explore the future code for sure.
Two quick comments, and that'll be it for me. The other thing that I'd like to consider, especially as we move towards the renewing of the master plan, is to consider a civic zoning category. We have a nice civic core in this Howell Iron Corridor, and separating those uses would allow us to draw a line between the residential neighborhood and the types of uses that happen in this corridor. So food for thought. I don't know that there's any action item on that, but I think what we've seen here tonight especially is a desire to protect the single-family housing in North Kansas City, and that's consistent with what already exists in the master plan. And so I think it's echoing you. It's time to put some additional protections in place. Second thing is this was my first night as chairman of the Planning Commission, so thank you all for coming to party with me. Appreciate it.
You got a good one.
Yeah.
I got, sorry, a couple more. So these comments received via email will be entered in the minutes, right? So that'll be on the next.
That is correct.
Okay, and then for future, it would be good if we get these before the meeting as well, maybe emailed to us or posted online, because especially when you talk about the stone brick feature wall, and I mean, there's some good ideas I like, but it's kind of hard to digest it when you're sitting down in the meeting and trying to do all that on the fly.
I was planning on reading them to you in the public, then till I look through all of them, like, it's probably better if I have an AI to read them through.
Yeah.
But that is a great suggestion. We will
Yeah,
probably
just something so we have in my hands, because
use the
yeah, if I
cutoff
would have,
line.
then I could have looked at the site plan and kind of considered this beforehand instead of, as you're sitting down here. And, yeah, appreciate that. Thank
That
you.
is a great suggestion.
I'm done.
You need a motion to adjourn?
Let's motion to adjourn.
Move it.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all for
I
coming.
didn't ask posed. No,
Opposed?
No, I'm kidding.
Who wants to keep going?